Welcome to WikiAfrica Hour, where Africa's Wikimedians talk to, learn from, and discuss with each other topics they choose. Each session is curated by African Wikimedians to expand Africa's open movement. Today's host is Ceslas Obanyaya.
Hello, lovers of open movement. I'm Ceslas Obanyaya, your host, and you're once again welcome to another episode of WikiAfrica Hour, the monthly podcast to support the activities of WikiAfrica movement and Wikimedians across Africa. And as for the month of May, we have some WikiAfrica Hour news updates for you.
Welcome to the month of May. Here are the WikiAfrica Hour News Update. The episode 11 of WikiMove podcast has just dropped, and it's on decentralization with Claudia Gerard and Guillaume Humer as guest speakers. You can find this podcast on the website and share ideas for future topics and guests on their meta page. The Leadership Development Working Group invites you to give feedback on the Leadership Development Plan, a practical resource for emerging and existing leaders across the Wikimedia movement who want to develop themselves and others. You can give feedback through the survey, Movement Strategy Forum, RDWG talk page, or email at leadershipworkinggroup@wikimedia.org. The review period closes on Sunday, May 28, 2023. The Movement Charter Drafting Committee has concluded its first community review of the methodology draft, which will be used to ratify the Movement Charter in 2024. This community review included feedback collection on Meta and on Movement Strategy Forum, as well as 2 conversation hours with communities and 1 conversation with the committees of the Wikimedia projects. The timeline of the next steps of the methodology is provided too. The Movement Charter Drafting Committee will incorporate the feedback and share an updated version of the ratification methodology in August 2023.
And thank you so much, Noni, for those interesting Wikimedia movement strategy updates. And now on Wikimedia Conference, I'm happy to announce to you that the Wikimedia User Group Kenya has submitted a bid to host the Wikimedia 2025 conference. Please ensure to endorse the bid. And you are also invited to save the date for this year's LD4 conference on linked data, which is to hold from July the 10th through July 14th, 2023. The conference, of course, will be held virtually this year and is open to anyone who is passionate about adopting linked data in libraries. Please see the 2022 LD4 conference website for past conference programming, and also keep an eye out for the call for proposals and other announcements about the 2023 LD4 conference.
Some news about Environment's campaign. Wiki Loves Earth 2023 International Photo Contest has started and announced a special nomination, Human Rights and Environment. In 2023, Wiki Loves Earth International Photo Contest again supports the initiative Wiki for Human Rights, which partners with the Wikimedia Foundation and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And this year, the contest accepts photos not only from the countries where the main contest is going to be, but also from the whole world. Check out the landing page for more detailed information.
And that's some juicy detail that you just shared, Noni. I mean, this year's Wiki Loves Earth accepting global contribution beyond the regular areas that used to participate. Thank you, Noni. And finally, a quick official Wikimedia Foundation update. The Wikimedia Foundation from 990 for financial year 2021 to 2022 is now on Wiki. You are welcome to please read the report and drop any reactions or comments. You can view all the news updates in the newsroom section on the WikiAfrica Hour meta page, and also the action links to take action on some of the items are very located in the description section. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to those news updates. And I welcome you officially to the episode 26 of WikiAfrica Hour, titled Africa and Movement Charter. Since inception, the Wikimedia movement has maintained a global approach in promoting free and open knowledge, despite the community being from various backgrounds and cultures across the globe. The quest for harmony in the global Wikimedia community has given birth to what we now know as the Movement Charter. Movement Charter, though a very popular term, is barely very relatable to many Wikimedians in terms of its content, especially to African Wikimedians. To actually shed more light to the offerings and the process and the contents, and of course the relevance of the Wikimedia Movement Charter, especially to the African community, we have invited the following guests who are members of the Movement Charter Drafting Committee. First, we have Anass Sedrati. Anass is a Moroccan Wikimedian who is contributing most about Moroccan culture, history, and politics. He has been active in the Wikimedia project since 2009. He's mostly working on creating articles on the Arabic Wikipedia, on Moroccan Arabic promotion online, and with the Amazic Wikipedia projects in the incubator. He is a co-founder of the Wikimedia Maroc user group and currently a member of the Movement Charter Drafting Committee. And next we have Georges Fodouop. George is a Cameroonian Wikimedian and has actually worked in the role of Wikipedian in residence from 2016 to 2018 in Cameroon for the Wikiloves Women project. He is a co-founder of Wikimedians of Cameroon user group. And he has also coordinated several projects in Cameroon and contributed to several campaigns of the Wikimedia movement in Africa. For example, the Wikiloves Africa, Wikiloves Earth, Wiki Challenge École d'Afrique, Wikiloves Women, One Lib, One Earth, Art and Feminism. He currently serves as a member of the Board of Trustees and Secretary of WikiFranca, and he is also a member of the Movement Charter Drafting Committee. Please welcome our special guests as we engage them. Hello, George. Hello, Anass.
Hello,
Hi, Slows.
Pleasure to have both of you here. And just in case I omitted something while trying to introduce you amazing persons, could you please reintroduce yourselves briefly, starting with you, Anass?
Yes, thank you so much, Teslaus. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to talk in this amazing podcast. I have been following it for a long time, so it's really a pleasure and a pride for me to be one of the guests. My name is Anass Sedrati. I am from Morocco. I don't think you have omitted anything. I think you have said it all. And I'm a member of the Movement Charter Drafting Committee. I'm here in this capacity. And of course, I'm a proud African. So that's another reason to be happy here to engage with my fellow continent brothers, if we can say like this. So thank you again for the invitation. Really happy to be here.
Thank you, Anass. And you, George?
I think that you say everything that you need to know now. I'm a member of the NCC and also work in different countries in African communities. Just what I can do now. Add what they are. I just
Yes, George, I think your microphone is
okay. Let me.
not very audible. Okay.
Is it good?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I am just to add that I'm a member of MCDC and also work with many francophone communities in Africa. Yes.
Thank you very much, George. And for the interest of our audience, I would like to let us know that this is a bilingual session. And George, of course, will be more comfortable speaking in French. And Anass has been kind enough to accept to translate for George. And the first question comes to you, Anass. So many interesting terms have been flying about in the movement, like movement strategy, UCoC, movement charter. We even dealt with the UCoC and other interesting acronyms during the episode 6 of WikiAfrica Hour. And that's how is the movement charter different from terms like movement strategy and UCoC? What is the movement charter?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think it's also a good place to start from. So I'll start maybe with movement strategy because this is the widest and also the biggest. So a strategy in general, if we don't think about movement, but if we think in general, what is a strategy? I would say it's a roadmap that you are going to follow. You put some goals, you put some aims, you put some targets, and you will say, this is my strategy. For example, my strategy is to be strong, so I have to do sport, think like that. So the Wikimedia movement has a strategy, a very ambitious strategy that has goals for 2030, and this strategy wants actually the Wikimedia ecosystem to be the biggest ecosystem in terms of free knowledge in the world, and we want to be the provider of this knowledge. And this, of course, contains a lot of areas and domains that need to be covered in order to reach to the targets that we have put. It has been, let's say, divided in 10 recommendations for those who are aware about it, and in 45 initiatives. And of course, these have different aspects, different interests, but they are all converging towards the same goal, which is to become the essential infrastructure for free knowledge in the world by 2030. So this is the strategy. The strategy is a very wide vision that you have, that you want to reach. That's the objective. And in order to reach that objective, you have to take some steps. Actually, I like the example of being stronger. So my strategy is I want to be stronger next year. So I have to go to the gym this week, next week, the week after, etc. So it's the same with strategy. You have to take some small steps. The UCoC that you have mentioned, Ceslaus, is the Universal Code of Conduct. It's a code that is related to how people and maybe organization also will behave with each other, how they collaborate with each other, what is accepted, what is not accepted. So this is part of the strategy, because if we want to be the essential infrastructure in 2030, we have to have good working relationships and have a code of conduct. So that's the UCoC. UCoC is included in the strategy, it's part of it. And in the same spirit, the movement charter exists. The movement charter, you can think about it like a constitution. So it's a document that is going to have different parts and different paragraphs that are going to describe what is the most important thing if you want to join the movement. For example, let's suppose someone doesn't know the Wikimedia movement at all. The movement charter is going to be the document that they're going to consult, to read, and to understand what is the movement. So it will contain, for example, the values. What are our core values as Wikimedians? The roles and responsibilities. What is the board of trustees' responsibilities? What are the affiliates' responsibilities? What's the role of the global council? And things like that. So think about it like you have a country and then you have a constitution. So this is the movement charter. It's part of the strategy, but it's not the full strategy. So we have the strategy is an umbrella that has objective, and you have to take a lot of steps to reach that objective. Among the steps, there is the Universal Code of Conduct, and there is the movement charter. But there are also many, many other things. I think people who are familiar with strategy know about these recommendations, and they're also aware about the different initiatives that exist there. For example, I know that some people in Africa are working with hubs. Other people are working with, for example, more sustainability or knowledge sharing, etc. So I hope that I clarified a little bit the differences, but strategy is the biggest one. Then you have many things inside it, like the Universal Code of Conduct and the Movement Charter.
That is an interesting analogy, Anass. I mean, the movement strategy is the mama bear or the mother, and then inside you have the UCoC and the movement charter. Thank you for actually simplifying this. I don't think I've actually heard it in such a detailed manner before now. And then we come to you, George. Hello, George.
Yes, I
Can you
understand.
hear
Yes.
me?
Yes, it's good.
Okay, nice, nice. I was worried that your mic had disappointed us once again. George, some people would opine that we survived over 20 years without the movement charter. Why do we need the movement charter at this point in the movement?
Ok, en fait, pour répondre à cette question, je voudrais utiliser plutôt une autre méthode pour expliquer en fait.
So to answer this question, I will need to use another method to explain.
En fait, je dirais que nous sommes dans un monde qui change, qui est véritablement en mutation.
So we are in a changing world that is currently in mutation.
Et même si on ne doit pas se conformer, parce qu'on a nos valeurs, notre identité comme Wikimedia Movement, on devrait véritablement s'arrimer.
So we have our values and identity as Wikimedia Movement, and we need to affirm that, to show that.
Oui, même si on ne doit pas se conformer au changement dans le monde, on doit pouvoir quand même s'arrimer aux mutations qu'il y a dans le monde.
So we have to adjust to these mutations that are happening in the world. There are going to be changes, and we have to adapt to them and adjust to them.
Et si nous sommes une ONG internationale et autres, ou bien si nous travaillons dans un contexte d'ONG internationale, il y a plus ou moins de façon globale une façon de fonctionner qui est aujourd'hui démocratique de façon globale, oui.
So we are an international NGO, an international movement, and we have to have a global way of working. It's important to have this global way of working to work.
Et je pense qu'il était question aussi, à un moment donné, de s'arrêter et d'évaluer le travail qui a été fait, comme tu as dit, après 20 ans.
And I think it's important to make a stop, to make a pause, and to evaluate and see what is the work that was done during these 20 years.
Et justement, c'est de ça qu'est partie la stratégie. Et la stratégie, ce qu'il y a de particulier sur la stratégie, c'est qu'on a une projection qui nous oriente vers 2030. C'est que pour arriver à 2030, on évalue le travail de 20 ans et on se dit, véritablement, avec les mutations, pour être le meilleur en termes de plateforme du mouvement libre, il est important qu'on puisse modifier nos habitudes, nos méthodes de travail pour être à même de pouvoir être les premiers, quoi.
So this is how the strategy started. The strategy started because after 20 years of working, we said, okay, now we want to be the best. We want to be the best platform or provider for free knowledge. So this is what we need to do and to reflect on what was done during these 20 years to be able to reach that objective.
Donc voilà un peu pourquoi est-ce qu'il est question qu'on change. Parce qu'on doit s'arrimer aux mutations du monde, parce que après évaluation de 20 années d'existence, on s'est rendu compte qu'il y avait des choses qu'il fallait qu'on retouche, qu'il fallait qu'on améliore, qu'il fallait qu'on optimise.
So this is why we need to change, because the world is evolving, and with this evolution, with these changes, we need to adapt. We have to see what was done during these 20 years, and then we have to maybe correct, we have to improve, we have to optimize, but things need to be changed.
Ok, voilà pour répondre à la question. Merci.
So this is my answer for the question.
Thank you so much, Anass, for that interpretation, and a bigger thank you, George, for highlighting those points. Yes, 20 years is enough for us to look behind and see how far we've come. Like I usually tell people, the Wikimedia space is one of the very fast-paced environment I've been in terms of activity. So if you're not careful, you really could use track of time without evaluating and knowing your impact at the long run. Thank you so much, George, for that detailed response. Back to you, Anass. I hear structure, I hear functionality. I also understand that there is a standard committee responsible for the drafting, of which both of you are part. How many people make up this committee, and how were the committee members chosen?
Okay, thank you. That's a really interesting question. and it's also very good to have it at the start of our discussion so that we can give a good and ample background for everyone who is watching. So the Movement Charter Drafting Committee comes actually from one of the recommendations, one of the strategy recommendations, which is the fourth recommendation. I think it's equity in decision making. So in order to be able to understand how decision making is happening, how roles and responsibilities are there, and these dynamics, it was necessary to create a committee that would write this charter. And it was not an easy task, I can say, because this started somewhere in 2021 with many actors and stakeholders who developed actually the plan of selection and election to be able to have members for the MCDC. So in somewhere around August 2021, it was decided that people would be able to join the Movement Charter Drafting Committee, or the MCDC, through three different ways. The first way was direct elections, how it's happening for the Board of Trustees. So there was a call for elections, and the Wikimedians could nominate themselves, and then there would be a vote, and those who would be on the highest places would go directly to the MCDC. Of course, there was an interesting rule that we had, which was that we could not have more than 2 people coming from one project in the MCDC, and this was for diversity's sake. So in the elections, if you have, for example, the 3 first people are from the English-speaking Wikipedia, then only the 2 first will go to the MCDC, and then we'll take the 4th one if they come from another project. So this is one part. One part is direct elections. Then there is a second part, which is selection. And this selection is also interesting, and it took a lot of time in order to put it into place. But the idea was that there was a team that was created that was called selectors. And these selectors were coming from different regions. So there was one selector from Africa, one selector from Asia, one selector from North America, one from South America, Europe, etc. And these people were tasked with to identify from the same pool of people who were in the elections, to identify, I hope I'm not mistaken, but I think it was 6 or maybe 7 people that would be selected to join the committee. So we had in the pool of elected people, those who came directly through because they were elected, they were the highest on the list, and then others who were selected for the sake of diversity from these selectors. And then the third way of joining the MCDC was directly from the Wikimedia Foundation. So in the design of the MCDC, 2 places were allocated for the Wikimedia Foundation. So we have 2 members, Jorge Vargas and Runa, who are both directors at the Wikimedia Foundation, who are part of the MCDC and are full members like us. In total, we are 15 members currently at the MCDC, and we represent different areas of the world. Of course, we are not representatives of our area, so I cannot claim that I represent Africa in the MCDC. But of course, we come with our background and we are with our vision, and we try to help with that because it's the way how we see things. So there are 15 people, and it was a long process to make these people work together. But now we are going on cruise speed, and we're happy because we started to produce things.
That's amazing, Anass. I, for one, didn't know there was a selection process. I strictly thought it was just about the election, and maybe by the end of the election, they came about you and George from this region and some other people from various regions. Now that you mentioned that there were different selectors who, participated in the process, it actually gives a wholesome view of how all of you, the 15 of you, were selected to be on the committee. Thank you so much for those details, Anas. And coming to you, George, we've heard about these 15 persons that are on the committee and how they were selected. Who does what on this committee? Are there subcommittees? And if yes, please educate us on the subcommittees and their roles.
Ok. Disons en fait que nous travaillons de façon générale ensemble. Hein. On a une réunion toutes les 2 semaines, la première chose.
So let's say that in general, we are working all together. And the first thing is that we have a bi-weekly meeting. So every 2 weeks, we have a meeting.
Et on fait aussi des travaux asynchrones. En fait, on prépare les documents et en semaine ou avant les réunions programmées, on peut donc intervenir sur les différents documents ou travaux qui nous sont soumis.
And also, we do a lot of asynchronous work, which means that between the meetings, we work on different documents and try to advance between these meetings.
Et en notre sein, donc, on a segmenté le MCDC en sous-commissions avec des rôles et responsabilités bien précises, quoi.
And we have divided the MCDC in different subcommittees that have clear roles and responsibilities.
Donc, il y a par exemple les premières sous-commissions qui ont travaillé. Par exemple, il y avait la sous-commission préambule qui devait donc réfléchir sur le préambule du mouvement.
So the first subcommittee that was created, or one of the first, was the one related to preamble, where they were tasked to write the part of the preamble about our movement.
Ensuite, il y a eu la commission valeurs et principes qui était donc appelée à, en s'appuyant, parce qu'il faudrait que je le dise, tout cela en fait part des recommandations de la stratégie en fait. Hein. Donc, la commission valeurs et principes donc, devait pouvoir, sur la base des travaux de la stratégie, mettre sur pied donc, les valeurs qui nous identifient véritablement comme mouvement Wikimedia.
Then another subcommittee that we had after was values and principles. And here I have to explain again that everything that we're doing in the MCDC and for the movement charter is emerging from the movement strategy. So it's really important to always consider what are our values, our principles, and that's why we need to have it in the charter.
On a notre sous-commission rôles et responsabilités qui en fait a pour objectif de véritablement, dans la présentation qu'Anass a faite au début, sur ce que c'est que la charte, c'est que les rôles et responsabilités viennent ici en fait définir les rôles et responsabilités de toutes les entités du mouvement, ça c'est une chose, et ensuite les interactions entre les différentes entités. Ça c'est véritablement le cahier des charges en fait de la sous-commission rôles et responsabilités.
So there is also another subcommittee, which is roles and responsibilities. So as Anass explained before, the charter is going to talk a lot about what are the different roles and responsibilities, and this subcommittee is working on that. So the subcommittee is first detailing what are the different roles and responsibilities of the different entities in the movement, but not only that, it's also describing the relationship between these different entities.
Ensuite, on a une sous-commission des hubs. Ça, c'est nouveau parce que les hubs, en fait, sont issus des travaux de la stratégie. C'est un travail carrément nouveau. Il est question, en fait, de réfléchir sur aujourd'hui, nous voulons mettre sur pied les hubs dans le mouvement. C'est quoi un hub? C'est quoi les critères pour pouvoir dire qu'on a un hub? C'est quoi les éléments à prendre en compte pour véritablement constituer un hub? Voilà un peu le travail qu'il convient de faire.
There is also a subcommittee about hubs, and this is really interesting because hubs is a new concept. We don't know yet what it is, and this subcommittee is working on questions to define, for example, a hub, to explain why we need hubs, what are the criteria that are needed in order to implement or create a hub. So this is really important for us to clarify these questions.
Et une autre nouveauté aussi, c'est le conseil global, quoi. C'est que c'est vraiment nouveau, ça revient toujours des recommandations de la stratégie. C'est quoi le conseil mondial qui sera mis sur pied? C'est quoi sa structure? C'est quoi sa composition? C'est quoi les critères qu'il faut prendre en compte véritablement pour parler du conseil mondial? Voilà un peu l'autre sous-commission.
Then there is another novelty, which is the Global Council. And here also the subcommittee is working on defining this Global Council. What is it? What's going to be its mandate? Who are going to be members? What are the criteria that are needed to be able to implement this Global Council? So these are some of the subcommittees that we have in the MCDC and working with different areas, as you see.
L'autre, l'avant-dernière, je dirais, c'est la sous-commission prise de décision. C'est quoi? Qui prend comment sont prises les décisions, c'est à quel niveau est-ce que les décisions sont prises et appliquées. Est-ce que les décisions sont prises à tel niveau, appliquées par qui, provisoirement appliquées. Voilà un peu ce sur quoi ils devront travailler.
The next last, the one that I would like to talk about is the decision-making subcommittee. It's an important subcommittee talking about how decisions are made, who makes decisions, why, to what extent do we need to make a decision? Is it going to be permanent? Is it going to be temporary? So yes, it's also something we need to think about.
Et en fait, bon, c'est pas une commission véritablement, mais on s'est dit, il fallait, vous savez qu'il y a trop de termes dans le mouvement, trop de termes. Parfois, on ne comprend pas c'est quoi un chapitre, c'est quoi un user group, c'est quoi la fondation, c'est quoi le Wikimedia Movement, c'est quoi Wikipédia, c'est quoi. Donc, il y a tellement de termes et tout. Et on s'est dit carrément qu'il faudrait qu'on mette sur pied une sorte d'annuaire, je ne sais pas si je peux appeler ça annuaire, mais la possibilité de pouvoir définir tous ces multiples thèmes qu'il y a dans le mouvement pour que ce soit les nouveaux, les anciens puissent se retrouver. Parfois, on confond Wikipédia et Wikimedia, quoi. Donc, il fallait que véritablement qu'on mette cela sur pied. Donc, il y a une commission aussi qui travaille à véritablement structurer cela.
Then we have also a subcommittee that works on the glossary, on defining words. You know, we have a lot of words in our movement, like Wikipedia, chapter, user group, Wikimedia, all these kind of words, and it's very easy to be lost. So this is going to be beneficial for both newcomers and also for experienced. We need to have a glossary, and this subcommittee is working on this glossary because they have to put the definitions so that people, again, newcomers or experienced people can understand and agree on the same definition.
Donc, voilà dans les différentes sous-commissions. Et nous sommes repartis donc dans les différentes sous-commissions. Chaque sous-commission travaille. Et après quoi, nous faisons une présentation générale à tout le MCDC. On réévalue le travail de chaque sous-commission. Et les sous-commissions repartent retravailler ce qui a été apporté comme remarques et suggestions en séance plénière.
So these are the subcommittees that we have. Every MCDC members need to be in a subcommittee. And what we do is that after that we do the work in a subcommittee, we have to present it to the full MCDC and maybe take their comments, their feedback, and take it back to rework it again.
Voilà pour répondre à la question. Merci.
So this is the answer to the question, and thank you.
Thank you so much, George, and thank you, Anass. I couldn't hold the laughter when he talked about the terms that are running everywhere in the movement. If you check our episode 6 of WikiAfrica, we dealt with the likes of UCoC, EDGR, SCF, U4C, and what have you. So guys, it's an interesting episode to really get to understand some of these terms. And I particularly am glad that there is a committee that is responsible for, putting all these together. That way we have a unanimous term for all of these. And I think it will be easier to grasp when we have all those together. Thank you once again, George, for that detailed response. And coming to you, Anass, when I hear about the subcommittees, I see a lot of changes coming through the movement charter. And in what ways would this charter affect our Wikimedia movement? And what does this mean for example, the African community?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think the charter is going to affect the movement in a very big, impactful way. So the charter, as Georges mentioned, it's not only about explaining the current situation. So the charter is not a dictionary. It has a part that is a dictionary explaining some words, but it will also come with a lot of new roles and responsibilities. So when George was mentioning the subcommittees, he mentioned, for example, that there is a subcommittee for hubs. There is a subcommittee for global council. So this means that we are going to have new entities that are coming into place. And this means that they will have roles and responsibilities and mandates that they're going to work with. So the first impact or change that the movement charter is going to come with is that it's going to bring these new entities that are going to be operating, they're going to be working, they are going to have activities. And what does it mean for the African context, since we are here with our African colleagues? This means that the African Wikimedians need also to consider this. If the charter is coming with a definition about hubs, then we have to see what is the status of hubs in Africa. Who is going to create hubs? What regions or what user groups or what chapters are going to come together to create a hub? And what will they do? What's their work? So this is going to have a huge impact because the ways of working are going to change. Maybe, I don't know, but I'm just saying, but maybe conferences will be organized by hubs. Of course, this is just an imaginary example, but then this is a concrete impact that will happen, and then you will see how hubs are going to work. It's the same for Global Council. We're still investigating, of course, and having a lot of discussions with many stakeholders about the Global Council, but it's very important to know what the Global Council roles will be. Is it going to have representative from every continent, for example, and in this case, who is going to represent Africa, and what is this person or these people going to decide about? Will they decide about grants? Will they decide about activities? Will they decide about accepting affiliates or not? So it's going to have a lot of impact because we will have a lot of changes. This is one part. So the one part is the new entities that are coming into place. Then there is also another part that it's going to be very impactful, which is all these roles and responsibilities and definitions, and as George mentioned, the relationship between entities. So there are many things that are existing right now, but people are not aware about them. And that's why we have one recommendation, I think recommendation number 7 in our strategy, which is to manage the internal knowledge. And having the podcast like this one, the WikiAfrica Hour, is great because we can share knowledge about Wikimedia, things that we know about Wikimedia with other Wikimedians. And sometimes, I am sure that you know about it, but all of us one day were newcomers and we really struggled to find information. So the movement charter is going to be like some kind of key that is going to provide information. So it's things that are existing now, but people don't know about them. They will know that this entity or this actor or these stakeholders have this mandate, this role, this power. So I think African Wikimedians, when they will read the charter, they will know more. They will be more educated. So they know whom to reach out to when they have a question, when they have a problem. And this is going to be really useful for them. It's going to help people to grow. I'm not saying that the information is hidden now, but I'm saying that the information is going to be much, much easier to find when we will have the charter in place. And again, you will see what are the roles and responsibilities and also how they're linked with each other. So this is going hopefully to have a huge impact and hopefully help our communities to know more and to grow.
I want to add something, if possible. Okay. En fait, je voulais ajouter une chose simplement pour dire que ce soit la stratégie ou la charte, tout ça vient en fait toucher la gouvernance dans le mouvement de façon globale. Et quand on dit gouvernance, il faudrait voir la gouvernance de la base au sommet et du sommet à la base. Ça veut en fait dire que il y a des mutations qui seront faites. Bon, Anass, je peux traduire d'abord.
Oh, thank you. So I wanted to add something. Either strategy or movement charter, we have to really be careful and think that this is going to touch the governance. And when we talk about governance, it goes both ways. It goes from top to down and also from bottom to up, both.
Donc, la gouvernance veut dire en fait que les mutations, les changements qu'il y aura au niveau du sommet, d'une manière ou d'une autre, auront des influences dans un futur proche, même sur la base. Je prends un exemple simple. Aujourd'hui, on parle d'équité, on parle de partage de rôles de responsabilité et même de partage du pouvoir et autres.
So governance is really important to take into consideration because with these mutations and changes that we have, if something happens on the top, it's going to impact everyone. So it's really important to think about these changes. And I will give an example.
Donc, équité, si on dit représentativité, dans un pays africain, comment sont constituées il y a eu les user groups, les hubs. Est-ce qu'il y a véritablement la représentativité? Est-ce qu'il y a véritablement l'équité? Est-ce qu'il y a véritablement une association dans la prise de décision de façon générale? Puisque c'est ce qui est fait ou ce qui sera fait dans le futur.
So when we talk, for example, about equity and share in the decision making, let's take examples of African countries. When a user group is created in an African country, how does this happen? Is there really equity? Do people talk with each other? Is everyone engaged in these decisions? We have to know, we have to understand, was this happening before? Is it going to happen in the future?
On parle maintenant de compte rendu. Tout ça, et c'est ce que la Fondation fait de façon régulière. Il y a tous les rencontres de communication, la vision, la stratégie et tout. De façon régulière, la Fondation communique. Donc, il y aura, d'une manière ou d'une autre, des répercussions sur les entités qui sont en dessous et évidemment en Afrique aussi.
So as you know, the foundation is communicating a lot about this. It's sharing information with everyone. And as you probably understood now, everything that is going to be happening on top is going to have impact on everyone who is in the movement. And this includes the African community, of course.
Et je l'ai souvent dit à plusieurs reprises, qu'on participe ou qu'on ne participe pas à la charte et à la stratégie, cela aura une influence sur nous.
And I said this many times. Either we participate in the charter or we don't, it will anyway impact us.
Donc, mieux vaut véritablement s'y engager, quoi, pour connaître de quoi est-ce qu'il est question.
So it's better to be engaged so that we can have impact.
Ok, voilà ce que je voulais ajouter à l'intervention d'Anass. Merci.
That's what I wanted to add, and thank you.
Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much, Anass. George, you actually made a very, very vital point because we always emphasize on the need for Africans to show up at these discussions. If not, a very few people at the top could make decisions that could affect the entire African community. So the earlier we start showing up to these discussions, the best for us. And Anass, both of you contributed a fact around how this, of course, has or will affect the governance structure in the African community. That's actually a no-brainer. I mean, if we are going to get the best out of this, then I think it's a welcome development. And another question for you, Anass. You've, of course, explained the governance structure that could change within, let's say, somewhere like the African Wikimedia community. We also have seen where the 2030 movement strategy and the UCoC stands in terms of governance structure. Anass, is there a possibility that this movement charter would change the Wikimedia Foundation structure this time, not the Wikimedia movement? And if yes, to what extent could this charter change the Wikimedia Foundation structure?
That's a very tricky question, but it's important to talk about it. So the Wikimedia Foundation, as probably everyone knows, is a foundation that is based in the USA that is working to support many matters related to Wikimedia. However, we have to make the distinction between the Wikimedia Foundation and the Wikimedia movement. So the Wikimedia Foundation is a foundation that is based in the USA and that is following the American regulations and laws, while the Wikimedia movement is, let's say, a gathering of structures and people, including the Wikimedia Foundation, but also many other people and many other organizations like the affiliates or partners or ourselves as online editors. So the movement charter is going to be presenting the different roles and responsibilities and the definitions, but it cannot, for example, go into a lot of details. So the movement charter is not going to say this person is going to do this role and his manager is going to be that person. We will not have this level of detail. The movement charter is going to be on a high level. It's going to explain roles and responsibilities on a high level and probably give also a mandate to other entities to figure out how they will do it. So let's take a concrete example and then I will answer about Wikimedia Foundation. So let's say that we at the movement charter decide that it's going to be the user groups who will organize conferences, For example, so the movement charter will write probably one row. It will say the user group have among their roles the organization of conferences. But then the movement charter will not write to organize a conference, you need a team of 10 people. And you need to have someone who will be communication manager. You need to have someone who will work on logistics. So that's the same. For the Wikimedia Foundation, the movement charter is going to give the roles and responsibilities of the Wikimedia Foundation. But then it will probably suppose that the Wikimedia Foundation is going to adapt and adjust to these roles within its own structure and knowledge. So if the Wikimedia Foundation wants, maybe they will change their departments based on what roles they have according to the charter. Maybe not, but the charter is not going to oblige them to change their internal structure. The foundation, the charter is going to just list the roles and responsibilities of the foundation and of other stakeholders as well. Because the foundation, as I mentioned, is an NGO that is based in the USA, but the movement charter is not a legal document. The movement charter is an agreement between all of us as Wikimedians. So an NGO that is based in the USA cannot actually be bound by a document that is written by us as volunteers. But it's not only about Wikimedia Foundation. This is also about chapters or user groups who have a legal status in their countries. However, this doesn't mean that the movement charter is not an important document. It's actually the opposite, because the movement charter is going to list these roles and responsibilities on a high level, and this is definitely going to impact the structure of entities that are listed in the charter. They will need to adjust, but it's up to them to decide on which level to adjust and how to adjust.
That's interesting. I actually, gave deep thought to that question, because I listened to the latest episode of the Wiki Move podcast, and it was on decentralization, and it actually says a lot in terms of understanding how the effects or consequences of coming up with something as important as the movement charter across the movement.
I can add something if you allow me to, maybe a concrete example. So I think, just to make it really concrete, for example, let's suppose the movement charter is going to say the Global Council is going to decide on grants, right? So this will have impact on the Wikimedia Foundation because they have a grants team. So maybe the Wikimedia Foundation will close this department because it's the Global Council who will do this work. But we cannot write in the charter the Wikimedia Foundation should close this department. They can keep it open if they want. So that's what I wanted to say through this example. You cannot oblige the foundation or any stakeholders to do something, but you will explain what is the role of everyone.
Thank you for that instant example, Anass. It actually makes sense on how they wish to interpret whatever recommendations that will be coming from the charter. And coming to you, George, you had mentioned the hubs, and you mentioned that there is a committee that is responsible for hubs as part of the work of the movement charter drafting committee. Hubs definition precisely. George, what type of hubs are we talking about here? Are we talking about language hub, thematic hub, or regional hubs? And in the light of these hubs coming to be, who will be responsible for the hubs?
Bon, je pense que tu as cité déjà les différents types de hubs qui sont énumérés, hein, que ce soit les hubs régionaux, les hubs linguistiques et les hubs thématiques. Ça, c'est ce qui est officiellement reconnu ou bien listé jusqu'à présent.
So I think that you have already mentioned different types of hubs, which are regional hubs, thematic hubs, and linguistic hubs, which are those that are officially mentioned and recognized at this moment.
Et pour l'instant, je dis, nous sommes véritablement en période de recherche, de collecte d'informations, et le travail ou la responsabilité de la sous-commission rôles et responsabilités véritablement vise à définir surtout par rapport aux hubs qui aura la charge de valider la création, d'approuver la création d'un hub et tout. Voilà un peu. Donc, pour l'instant, je ne peux pas te dire que c'est la fondation qui devrait approuver le hub, c'est le Conseil mondial qui devrait approuver le hub. Donc, il faudrait, comme Anass l'a dit, il faudrait toujours réfléchir dans une logique élevée ou globale. Voilà. Parce que cela a, d'une manière ou d'une autre, des implications aussi à certains niveaux.
So for this moment, at this stage, we're still at the discussion stage, involving, of course, many stakeholders, and we at the subcommittee working with roles and responsibilities, we are tackling these questions right now. So one of the questions that we still don't have answer to is who is going to recognize hubs? Who is going to work with that recognition and make the decision? Is it going to be the Wikimedia Foundation? Is it going to be the Global Council? And as Anass mentioned, we have always to look from the higher level in order to be able to have to zoom out and have this global view.
Donc, il y aura la reconnaissance, il y aura aussi la non-reconnaissance ou la dissolution. Tout ça, en fait, on devrait voir tous les contours. Parce que si on voit un aspect, la création d'un hub, il y a aussi les aspects de la place du hub dans le mouvement. Est-ce que ils ont une place ou bien ils sont juste là de nom, puisque c'est un ensemble d'affiliés. Voilà. Est-ce que le hub a une reconnaissance véritable au niveau légal? Est-ce que le hub peut véritablement entreprendre des actions, des initiatives? Donc voilà autant de questions sur lesquelles on est en train de se pencher. Est-ce que le hub peut faire la collecte des fonds ou pas? Est-ce que le hub peut redistribuer? C'est que des questionnements. Nous sommes dans la période des questionnements véritablement, en nous inspirant de ce qui existe ou bien des modèles qui actuellement sont à notre disposition, quoi.
So again, at this moment, we are mostly at the question stage, and we are trying to look at the different questions that are around the hubs, because this is what is going to help us to write our part related to hubs. So among questions that we have is, are hubs going to have a legal status? Are hubs going to do fundraising? Are hubs going to distribute funds? There are many things related to hubs that we're still asking questions about, and that we need to have a clearer view so that we're able to deliver our charter and this part related to hubs.
Donc voilà ce qu'il en est pour les hubs, mais il n'y a pour l'instant aucune décision qui est prise véritablement. C'est vraiment dans les échanges, les discussions, les confrontations d'idées et autres, quoi.
So this is what is about hubs for the moment. We have a lot of discussions, a lot of questions, but we don't have any decision yet. We're just having these discussions so that we can again produce a good output, hopefully, for the community.
Thank you so much, George, and thank you for the interpretation, Anass. I am particularly thrilled to know that we are considering all these options around hubs, talk about a language hub, thematic hub, and the regional hub. I'm also interested that there is discussion going on about who should be responsible, whether the Global Council or the Wikimedia Foundation, or who knows, maybe both in the long run or by the time it is absolutely decided. Thank you for that. And the next question for you, George. We have seen some of the movement charter processes so far. George, for the interest of those who are not up to date with the completed processes, please share the movement charter steps that have been completed so far and where we are currently.
OK. Je pense que de façon régulière, on a largement présenté un peu notre planning d'activité. Pour l'instant, on est dans les phases de rédaction.
So I think overall, I can present a bit of our timeline. For the moment, we are at the drafting phase.
Donc, après, de façon régulière, on a fait la première partie des travaux des sous-commissions, préambule, rôle, et responsabilités et valeurs et principes. Et à la suite de cela, on a fait donc une communication avec, une interaction avec la communauté. Ouais.
So we already drafted some first parts, like the preamble, the values, and the principles and also the first draft of the roles and responsibilities. And we had a first community conversation where the community engaged with us.
Donc, quand nous aurons fini avec cette série de travaux dans lesquels nous nous trouvons, c'est-à-dire le travail des hubs, le travail du Conseil mondial, le travail d'esprit de décision, et même encore le travail de rôles et responsabilités, on va communiquer le résultat des travaux et on va ensuite, à la suite de cela, organiser encore les conversations communautaires pour écouter ce que la communauté pense dans chaque thématique qui aura été présentée.
So at this very moment, we are working with roles and responsibilities, we are working with hubs, we are working with decision making, and we are working with the Global Council. And once we will clarify the different questions that we shared some examples about just now, and we will have a draft ready, then we will share it again with the community, because we want, of course, to hear their feedback so that we can incorporate it and improve our draft.
Donc, après la présentation donc, des travaux et de l'échange avec la communauté, on reviendra encore en sous-commission et en plénière pour retravailler sur la base des remarques qui ont été récoltées des différentes conversations au sein de la communauté, parce que les conversations sont variées à travers le mouvement.
So after the community conversation, we have to come back to our respective subcommittees. We have also to sit together as a full committee and take this feedback that was shared with us so that we can work with it. And it's important to know that it's not one conversation, it's many conversations that are happening in different communities and also with different stakeholders.
Donc, ça, c'est un peu l'évolution. À la suite, en fait, de tout ça, on passera à la période de ce qu'on appelle la ratification. Parce qu'il faudra évidemment valider ou invalider, bien sûr, la charte.
So this is what we're doing currently, and the step after it would be what is called ratification. Ratification is an important step because it will be the step where the charter will be approved or maybe not approved.
Voilà, donc voilà en quelque sorte le calendrier de nos différentes activités ou bien de l'évolution du travail du MCDC ou de la charte.
So this is somehow the timeline of the evolution of our activities or of the work that is being done now by the MCDC to be able to produce a charter.
Thank you, Anass, and thank you, George. And indeed, that's quite a detailed process that we have listened to you explain. And I kept hearing consultations, community consultations, and all that. Anass, if I may ask, we always have, or we have increasingly number of unorganized communities, unorganized groups of editors and individual editors. And that's how do we ensure that such people are being carried along in all these consultations happening?
That's a good question. So you have to know something. The Movement Charter Drafting Committee, which are the 15 people I talked about, are doing this as volunteers. So we're doing it as a voluntary basis. But we have a team that is supporting us from the Wikimedia Foundation, that is Wikimedia Foundation staff. And this team is pretty big and have different roles. And among the roles that exist in this team, there are many who are working with the community as community facilitators. So they try to make engagement related to the charter and be sort of a bridge between the Movement Charter Drafting Committee and the respective communities. And in that sense, these people are informing and updating about the changes or anything that is happening in the level of the MCDC, and most specifically when there are going to be community conversations. And the community conversations are happening in different ways with different communities, as George mentioned, but also in different formats. They can be in the Movement Strategy Forum, they can be through calls in Zoom, they can be on Meta directly, they can be on social media for some communities. So this is important to know. And you have mentioned a very good thing, which is unorganized groups, or maybe people who are just enthusiastic about Wikimedia but are not part of an affiliate, these are very important group, because we need to listen to everyone. We need to listen to all stakeholders, and they can join through different ways. The first way is probably if they are just connected somehow with the community facilitator, following, for example, mailing lists, or being in Telegram groups. It will be very easy to see that a call is happening. But they can also, if they are unorganized groups but they are editors, then they will be able to see this on Wiki, because announcements are also made on Wiki. So even individual editors, it's very difficult to reach individual editors, more difficult than to reach unorganized groups. But the movement charter wants to reach individual editors also, because we want this charter to be so inclusive, as inclusive as it can be. We want to reach to the individual editors, we want to reach to the board of trustees, we want to reach to all the affiliates, we want to reach to unaffiliated groups. That's really important for us. So I advise anyone who is listening to this podcast, in case they never heard about the charter and they don't know what to do, they can just reach out to us. They can contact us, and we will give them the contacts of people from their own community who are either working as staff with the foundation, or even ambassadors, because we have charter ambassadors who are volunteers that are helping with the charter. But there are a lot of people who are there to share this information, so we can always connect, and we will be really happy, because I have to repeat it, I know that George has said it, but we want to have more feedback from Africa. The African people need to be giving their feedback, because if they don't provide their feedback, the charter is going anyway to happen, and it's going anyway to be impacting them. So you better be impacted by something that you have shaped than with something that you didn't participate in.
Thank you, Anass. I actually fear the worst. I mean, if we don't participate as a community in these conversations, and then something is just being, served to us hook, line, and sinker, and we don't have any option, because probably the time for conversation may have passed by then. So I actually like the fact that there are devised means to reach these unorganized contributors and individual editors to also be part of the process. And lastly, coming to you, George, you had mentioned that the ratification process is actually in view. George, when are we likely to have a complete movement charter published?
Bon, je trouve ça c'est une question un peu délicate, hein? Je voudrais le dire, ouais.
I would like to say that this is a tricky question.
Nous avons dans le calendrier normalement prévu, c'est 2024. Ouais.
So in our timeline, we have written that it's 2024.
Mais tout va dépendre aussi maintenant des interactions avec la communauté, de tout ça en fait. L'idéal, c'est 2024. Maintenant, est-ce que en termes de consultation communautaire, en termes de retour au MCDC, retravail et tout, est-ce qu'on devra véritablement respecter le calendrier? Ça, c'est notre souhait. C'est notre souhait, c'est ce que je pense. Et bon, on verra quoi. C'est ce que je peux dire, oui.
So ideally, our wish, of course, is to have the charter ready by 2024. But in the meantime, we have to take community conversations, and depending on the feedback that we will receive, and depending on the amount of work that needs to be done, on the changes that needs to be done, we have to see. But ideally, we really wish to be able to provide it next year.
Donc voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant concernant la question.
So this is what I can say right now regarding your question.
Thank you so much for the interpretation on that, and thank you, George. There is something I have seen happen from time to time within the Wikimedia space. It's also happened during the UCoC. There will be back and forth in terms of the content and all that. So that is likely to push the whole ratification and publication to the 2024. And it's okay that at least we know the year to expect the publication. Yes. And with that, I say a big thank you to you, Anass, Sedrati, and George Fodouop, for the detailed answers you've given to the questions asked so far. Hopefully, I don't know if anybody from the audience would have a question or more for you. If you have any
Merci,
question,
mon
please, this
gars.
is the time to ask. Dorian.
Peut-être
Yes,
Ayla a
what
posé une question.
languages?
Do you want me to answer
Yes,
the
what
question that is
languages?
now about the languages?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. So first, thank you for the question. It's a really important question. But because the charter is about roles and responsibilities, again, we have to clarify roles and responsibilities. So the Movement Charter Drafting Committee, the MCDC, of which me and George are part, is writing the charter in English. So we are working, our working language is in English, and we are writing the different chapters in English. But there is support from the Wikimedia Foundation because they will be as inclusive as possible. So we know that after the final, every draft that is available has different translations. It should be the Wikimedia Foundation probably who can answer best what are exactly the languages that they will translate to, but it's usually more than 10 languages. If you see, for example, the Universal Code of Conduct and to how many languages it was translated, I think the Movement Charter will be translated to a range of languages similar to that. But just for clarity's sake, we at the MCDC are writing in English, and then Wikimedia Foundation is providing translation resources and services to be able to translate to as many languages as they can.
Thank you, Anas, because we are very big in the movement talking about inclusivity and all that. So we are looking forward to see the number of languages to which the charter will be, into which the charter will be translated in order to make sure it's digestible by as many of us as possible. I don't know if there's any other question. If not, I say thank you, Ayla, for bringing up that very important question. And with that, we close. For closing remarks, the movement charter is really a serious business that could change the entire Wikimedia movement from top to bottom. This is enough reason for every one of us to ensure we make our valuable contributions towards the drafting of the movement charter and the entire process, especially those of us from the African community who have mostly been missing in some of the very important and strategic discussions in the Wikimedia space. By all means, be part of the conversations, contribute to the discussions, so you won't feel like things are being imposed on you when the movement charter takes full effect. On behalf of the Wiki in Africa team, I say thank you once again, Anass Sedrati and George Fodouop, for finding time in your very busy MCDC schedule to honor our invitation. I also thank everyone who was able to show up and attend. And to the African community, please, please, and please participate in the process. And with that, I say, have a nice weekend and see you next time.
Thank you.
This episode of WikiAfrica Hour was hosted by Ceslaus Obanaya. Let us know what topics you want to discuss and join us next month on the same channels. Subscribe to the Wiki in Africa YouTube channel and follow WikiAfrica on social media.